people can also be scared of being their authentic selves. Then they may think it's too vulnerable or not appropriate in the workplace. Like, you obviously have to be disciplined in your composure and how you present yourself, but that's not meaning that you're not authentic. You're your authentic self. And I think if you're authentic, people know that they're getting something real with you.
Yeah.
And that breeds loyalty and a closer type of relationship and a better work culture.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Best You interview series. It's Gary here again. Thank you very, very much, as always, for taking the time to join me. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Senior Attorney at Michael Sullivan and Associates, LLP, in California, United States of America, Pilar Mitchell, who is here to discuss her journey in both law and leadership. Pilar is a bar certified specialist in workers' compensation law, and recently Pilar founded the audit and consulting department within her organisation, which has become one of the firm's flagship offerings to industry. And the team represents and defends insured and self-insured employers and third-party administrators facing complex issues stemming from the state's regulatory audit processes, which I am sure are not complex at all. Pilar's previous experience with the organisation included representing insurance carriers, self-insured employers and public entities in all aspects of workers' compensation. Pilar received her Juris Doctor degree from the University of Kansas School of Law and her undergraduate degree from Pepperdine University in Malibu. Now, I know a wee bit about the Juris Doctorate degree now, and I didn't before I started teaching at U of C, and there has been a number of students that have come through now to get their undergraduate degree and then do the Juris degree, and I was clueless in the beginning, and I had to say, look, what is this, just a made up word? Did you guys just make up a thing? And I was educated in the actual process to getting the ability to be able to study law and to obviously qualify and practice in law as well. Now, Pilar and I have a personal relationship. We met somewhat fortuitously in, what was that, September in 2025 while attending the Oasis comeback tour, no less. And woof, what a night, what a day and night that ended up being, what a weekend it ended up being actually. And since then, we have we've kept in touch, and Pilar's, I have an extended friend through the family now. Pilar's husband, Chris, is like me, a Scotsman and a very passionate Rangers fan, and we have many a conversation about Rangers as well. So it's nothing like keeping it in the family. Pilar, thank you very, very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. This has been quite a wee time in the making, and This actually, I tell you, just talking about the Oasis weekend, that's where it all started, literally, because you'd walked in, and my pal Brian, who I was staying with, is Chris's cousin, and he says, "Oh, Pilar's a lawyer," and then we just ended up having a conversation about coaching and about law, and I said, "You would be a great fit for this podcast," and I told you a wee bit about it, and we exchanged details and such. So to talk about your life and career, I've given a wee bit of a synopsis there, and I do want to focus when we get into the conversation in and around your leadership journey as well, because it's not just you practicing as an individual contributor. You've expanded your reach within the organisation to both leadership and entrepreneurship, which we will get to a little bit later too. But give us, fill in the blanks that I didn't mention there, Pilar, please.
Oh, gosh. You gave a really complete summary of where I'm at. But yeah, so I grew up in California. As you indicated, I went to Pepperdine in undergrad. And one of the things that I kind of was focusing on at the time was politics. I was really interested in history. So I ended up double majoring in political science and Spanish while I was there. Spanish just because my family is Peruvian by heritage.
Right.
And so I already spoke Spanish, and it allowed me to kind of expand on some of the grammar, literature, and all those things that made me like a full functioning Spanish speaker that could potentially teach as an alternative path if law didn't work out for me. But I actually knew that I wanted to be a lawyer quite young, which I think is different than a lot of people. A lot of people go into college not even really knowing what they want to do.
Yeah.
In a way, it was like a blessing and a curse. I came from a family that was kind of strict in terms of limiting the options that they felt was, an appropriate profession for me to enter into. Um, and I didn't feel slighted by it by any means, but it definitely directed like where my head was at from a very young age.
Yeah.
Um, my grandmother, who I grew up with, was a passionate like Columbo and Matlock watcher. Like she loved those shows. And so I would kind of bonded with her over Matlock.
Yeah.
And I saw how much she always wanted to be something like a lawyer, and she never had the opportunity growing up in Peru, and just not having the education or the opportunity to do that. And so I felt like I was her chance. We bonded over it, and I just always knew that I wanted to be a lawyer. Maybe part of me was just wanting to make her proud. I don't know. So I went into Pepperdine knowing that's what I wanted to do. Studied for the LSAT, went straight into law school from graduating.
Yeah.
So I kind of set myself up to go straight. I didn't want to take any time off. Went to the University of Kansas. Interestingly, the reason I went to Kansas was because it was ranked the same as Pepperdine at the time, and I was considering staying at Pepperdine, which has a pretty good law school. And they gave me, some better financial incentive to go over there. I had an aunt that was over in Kansas, and I thought, it'd be kind of nice to get out of California at least once in my life and, live somewhere else. And so I went to Kansas. I did 2 years of law school there, and then I finished my law school at Pepperdine.
Right.
And yeah, then I just got to work. I'm one of those people that I just ain't no rest for the wicked,
That's brilliant, and the experience I have with the undergrads is very similar, where they are very clear and focused that law is their absolute. I don't know if it's because of Matlock and Columbo, but it's their passion. There does seem to be a bit of a family connection a lot of the time, in terms of there's lawyers in the family, or in some way that there's some sort of connection there. But to go back to one of the things you said there, Pilar, in terms of that there was. This is my words now, not your words, but there's somewhat of a box set around what's appropriate for Pilar to concentrate her energy and efforts on, that would be an appropriate career for her. What was that? Was it because of your Peruvian heritage? Was it because of the successes or not of the family to date? Was it because of your gender? How did that all come about?
That's an interesting question. I think it does have a lot to do with how my Peruvian heritage, my family had grown up under. They always prioritize education, always saw education and being some sort of professional, like an engineer, a doctor, a lawyer, as like the way to make it in the world.
Yeah.
And especially with my grandma, like she's always strived for that. And like I said, the opportunity never really presented itself for her. And so she emphasized a lot. I think it's a cultural thing. I think a lot of cultures outside of the United States in particular, but a lot of cultures have that sort of strict guiding principles for their children as they're coming up. They want them, I have a lot of friends in here that were born and raised in the United States, and their parents were more of like, do whatever you want, do whatever makes you happy. Like,
yeah,
that was never really the message to me. But like I said, I don't slight them, because I also see some friends where they drown in options and choices. And then they have so many choices, they don't do anything.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's like a right way or a wrong way, but I appreciate that my parents kind of like directed me. It helped me focus and really make something of myself.
Yeah, it gives you that opportunity to see the opportunity and be a bit more targeted towards that. It's fascinating just thinking about that. My upbringing it wasn't school. It was just basically do what you're doing. Basically, don't be an arsehole. Don't get into trouble and get a job. Find a job. Any job will do. And straight from school, I became a painter, a house painter. And my parents were kind of like, yay, Gary's got a job and he's going to be a full-time serve painter in a few years here and such. And I actually said, before I emigrated, I said, you never, as a speech in front of the family and a bit of a homage to my parents at the time, you never ever push me to do anything, but equally you never discouraged me from doing anything as well. So I wouldn't have minded a wee bit of a push. Folks, that would have been kind of nice, but thank you for giving me the space to grow into myself and such. And it's that generational thing we were chatting just before the recording about, parenting and how, what that's going to manifest itself and how quickly it's going to pass and things like that. And the intention I've always had with Leo, my son, has been read, work hard at school, give yourself options. I really, truly don't mind what you do, but give yourself options. As you said earlier, drowning in options, I'm going to have to pay a bit of attention to that. I hadn't really thought about it in that way before. So that's some sage advice in there. So you're in a situation now, Pilar, where the organization you work with has multiple offices in the state of California, and you are a leader for a couple of those offices. I'm really interested to hear a bit more about your leadership journey. Was that something that naturally came to you? Did it land in your lap? Was it something you were aspiring to from day one?
I'd say it kind of landed in my lap. I think being successful in the workplace is a little bit of luck, a little bit of work ethic. So you have to have the right combination. Luck is definitely a part of it. There was an opportunity that presented itself for me to come and open an office for the firm in Central California. And I was willing to take that opportunity. But I had already become a bit of a leader inside of the firm again, it had a lot to do with work ethic. It's funny, like in my mind, it doesn't take that much to outwork other people. And working hard is actually a way to be a leader. In fact, it's probably the most impactful way. Even as I've continued managing offices, I've realized that I need to be working harder than everybody else in the office to maintain that respect level from everybody else. But just back to your original question, I don't think that I was necessarily, I think I've always been a bit of a leader, but I wasn't a natural born manager. I think there's a bit of a difference.
Yeah.
Management requires a lot of skills that to me didn't come naturally. For example, having to engage in difficult conversations with peers. Because ultimately, as I was coming up, I was relatively young. And so a lot of the people that I was supervising were, very similar in age to me. It's difficult to engage people in difficult conversations and do it with a sense of confidence, maturity, and calmness that's going to bring a result that you're actually trying to get. I was a bit emotional or reactionary. My personality was a bit reactive. So there's some skills that I had to learn in terms of management to make me a better leader. But I think growing up, I've always had some leadership type of skills. Like I played basketball when I was young and I was always the captain of the team. I've always wanted to aspire to be the best at whatever it is I was doing. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned work ethic there, and you kind of, if you forgive me for saying this, you kind of underplayed your work ethic a wee bit, saying it doesn't seem that difficult to be able to outwork other people. It sounds like that's because that comes naturally to you, and that ability to be able to look at the landscape and say, what is being rewarded here, what is the norm in terms of work ethic, in terms of output, quality of output, relationships being built, volume of work, and such, whatever those parameters would be in terms of measurement criteria. And then strategically to say, this is the best investment of my time. Was it as calculated as that for you, or did it all come as one big package?
It's kind of a tough question. Can you repeat the question actually?
So I'm wondering if you were super strategic in saying this is the best way to outwork my peer group, the people, our competition, for example, even outside of the organization, or was it just something that you just naturally did and there wasn't really a comparative part of that where you're really comparing yourself to others to see what the competitive advantage would be?
I think it's both, actually. A lot of it did come very naturally to me. That saying, things in motion stay in motion. I think once you get into a lifestyle that's you're striving to work hard, you have discipline. That's another characteristic. it becomes natural to you.
Mhm.
But in the same sense, you can't stop your mind from constantly comparing yourself to what other people are doing and striving to just do a little bit better, especially if you're in that mindset.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know which one is like more pulling me more, or dictating more of the way that I'm actually acting. I think it's probably just both at this point.
Mhm.
Um, as I've come, as I'm getting older, I'm doing a lot less of comparing myself. I feel a little bit more settled in what I've achieved.
Mhm.
And so it's less of a competition and more of like true leadership, where you're just trying to get people that are working with you to be better.
Yes.
Um, so that could have been a little bit of immaturity on my end, coming up as a leader and thinking that everything was a competition and constantly comparing myself. I think that was subconsciously happening. But then I say it's natural because I don't remember a time where I wasn't really like that, whether it was school or sports or whatever it is I was doing. So
Yeah, just have that edge. And
yeah.
it's such a fascinating topic because I know that I understand that the adage of comparison is the thief of joy. And
Hmm.
I understand that if it's used for negative purposes, but I don't fully subscribe to that, because there is an opportunity to compare from a positive perspective, to say this is more difficult than it should be. There has to be a better or easier or more efficient way to do this. Can I explain to you what I'm doing, and you could tell me how you would do that or how you do it today? And then all of a sudden it becomes a support network, not so much a competition between peers. But as you say, it takes a bit of emotional experience to get to that. And it's unfortunately just the passage of time and the experience that comes with the passage of time and the experiences within the passage of time that really dictates how you look back upon yourself during those times.
Yeah, it's like you're right. It is a double-edged sword though, because that feeling of constantly wanting to do more and more and more does have this negative impact on your life, where you feel it's like you feel fulfilled when you achieve, but then you want something else, and so you feel unfulfilled. It's like the person with the bad shopping habit. They
Yeah.
buy something and they feel good for 5 seconds, and then they need something else.
Yeah.
Um, so I think having my type of personality can also have a lot of negatives, which is this idea that you leave the workplace constantly feeling like you've just not achieved as much as your potential is to achieve,
Yeah.
even though you've done more than even your peers.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. I can say I've gone to bed unhappy many a times, thinking about how I wish things were different. I wish I was better at this. I wish I was better at that. Just racking my brain, and my husband being like, "You've done so much. Relax."
Yeah.
Um,
Easier said than done, of course.
mhm,
I talk often about, you go into the office with a list of things to do. You leave the office having went full bore for 10, 12 hours. You didn't touch anything on that list, because as soon as you walked physically in the door, or virtually, I guess, in the door, someone was like, I need you to come over here. This thing's happened, that's happened. And then before you know it, you're kind of driving home in a daze thinking, what happened there?
yeah.
More so in a leadership position when you have responsibility for and to other people at the same time. What would you say has been the biggest leadership challenges that you've faced from the very early days up to and including just now?
I think being a woman in business, like, so I grew up I have a twin brother.
Right.
We were raised very similarly. I played sports. I never felt, this disenfranchised, I'm a woman, so I'm less than. I never had that experience, and I didn't even think it existed. I thought everybody that talked about that was just making it up. Um, and then once I came into, law and business, you realize it really is a man's, it's changing. And even when I was growing up, coming up, it was changing, but it really is a man's world.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is, not only is it male dominated, but you can easily and quickly lose the respect of the room if you don't speak or carry yourself in a certain way. And that's something that I'm always trying to discipline myself with, to carry myself in a certain way, because I don't know if it's a natural instinctual thing or just something that, because the boardrooms are filled with men, it's just the culture of the boardroom. But if you come with any sense of emotion, as a woman, it's very easy for your comments to be disregarded as, something that's an emotional response that's, oh, she's got to calm down. We'll deal with her later. And it's very easy to get disregarded. And that could be if you're trying to present your case in front of a judge and you think that because you're speaking more passionately and loudly, you're going to get your point across, or going into a boardroom and speaking with other business people about a decision you want to make and you just start crying because they're not agreeing with it, whatever. Like women have emotions. It is what it is. I think that's the biggest struggle in terms of becoming a leader in the world that I've seen, that I've had to adjust. So now I'm very, very cognizant of how I'm coming across. I listen a lot more than I speak. And then I've noticed that if I'm constantly listening, people are curious about what I'm going to say. And then you speak confidently, slowly, but with surety. You're much more respected than just speaking all the time or talking the loudest or being emotional. So I don't know if that answers your question or if it makes sense, but that's the biggest lesson that I've learned in leadership is, as a woman, you really have to learn how to carry yourself. And it's unfortunate that we have to, because men get passionate. I've been in meetings where men are screaming at each other and saying curse words, and it's not treated the same way as when a woman has an emotional response. And so It is what it is,
Yeah, and it's disappointing when we have to end up a statement by saying it is what it is, but for a certain part of the story, it genuinely is what it is. I was smiling earlier, when you were saying that you just didn't think the gender gap or the gender bias was even a thing. I've said many a time that was my experience too. I grew up in a household full of women, of 4 sisters, and a very strong-willed mum. Most of the bosses that I've had in my life, certainly the ones that have been very, very effective for me, have been female. So when I hear about the gender inequity and the biases and such, I used to make a joke of it. Honestly, I did. And that's how ignorant I was until I met my love Erin, and she educated me a wee bit. And then I was kind of like, oh, right, that's a thing. And then I paid more attention to it. I didn't feel like I had to before, because it just wasn't even part of the equation. I would deal with my colleagues and peers and bosses the exact same way. And then I'd started to realize how rare that was in certain industries and or companies that I navigated in. And then in terms of you readying yourself and paying that constant attention over time, has that ended up becoming something natural for you, Pilar, where you say, this is just part of my kind of readiness routine to know and understand who the players are in the room, what type and style of information we're going to exchange with each other, what the preferred outcomes are going to be. This is how I help to get that there. Or is there something external where it's still a monumental effort and it's a kind of real add-on to your life?
It's definitely gotten a lot more natural for me. Now this is years of working on it with leadership coaches and people, emotional maturity coaches that help you with tools and help you really understand how it is that you're coming across and how you can better express yourself. And then also years of just messing up. Sometimes you just got to go through it and see the reaction to your reaction. I mean, you get tired of being told that you're being defensive just because you're having an emotional response to something. And that's a very common thing that women can be told is like, oh, she's just being defensive. And it's like, you can be passionate. Now I'm being passionate, I'm defensive. And it's, I know I said earlier, it is what it is. I think it's just a natural, I don't think it's malicious at all. It's just a part of the culture, the business culture and how it's evolved. And I'd imagine the US is similar to Canada in the sense that like the business world is what the business world is. And it's just an adjustment, different adjustment that men have to make and women have to make. And that's just one of the things that I've learned. It definitely comes more natural though, as you practice.
Yeah.
Which is another thing, like when I started with the leadership coaching and the emotional maturity coaching, I thought, oh, this is just a bunch of, crap, for lack of a better word. And then the more I did it, I realized like it really impacted and changed the way that I function daily, even with my significant others, even on a personal level. And it really was impactful. And now a lot of it, I have so many tools in my tool belt that a lot of it comes a lot more natural to me.
Yeah, I do really appreciate you saying that. You know, obviously, being a coach at heart, that's something. It's great to hear the journey, because a lot of times people are forced into coaching. You know, it's a case of you need to go and do this because you need to get better at this. So you're there somewhat unwilling or under duress, and then the coach is trying their best to help you out, and it's you're just missing each other. Whereas then all of a sudden, one of the key things I'll say to clients, especially newer clients, is like there's no light switch that's going to be flicked. You're going to have this epiphany and aha moment, and everything is going to be okay. It's a series of incremental modifications to your existing practices or behaviors or thoughts or feelings or patterns or whatever it looks like, to give yourself that best opportunity to then act or react differently and more commensurate with who and what you want to be going forward. Some people are into that. Some people are up for the fight, so to speak, are certainly up for putting in the work. And some other people are kind of like, I've got 500 other things to do all day, every day. This is another thing. And I just can't, once and insert whatever real genuine reason here, once the kids are older, once this project is done, once the summer is past, once this busy period is done, you know, I'll then dedicate more time to myself. And it becomes then this difficult conversation where I'm saying, if not now, when? Because if you do it now, the end of your summer, the end of that project, the end of this year, whatever it's going to be, is going to be much more clear and open, and incremental changes will be made. But then it feels like a wee bit of marketing speak at that time, you know. So to hear that genuinely from someone who's gone through that journey of saying, rubbish, actually there might be something to this. Oh, wow, I'm actually really delighted that I did that, because I have these tools at my disposal now to use whenever I need them, is great. As an extension of that, mentorship, were you fortunate enough to have mentors, male or female, as you were coming up through your career?
Yeah, so one of the people who's now a partner with me in the law firm, I'd say was probably the most significant mentor I had coming up. And to your point about what you're saying, like the light bulb doesn't switch off in terms of the coaching and all of a sudden being open to it.
Yeah.
What worked for me was seeing my mentors engaging in the coaching with an openness and a vulnerability that like almost shocked me.
Yeah.
To see. So watching them get coached and watching them transition was the light bulb for me. And I always keep that in the back of my mind, because now that I have subordinates, thinking to myself, like, if I want them to be open to emotional maturity training or whatever it is that we're trying to do, probably the most impactful thing I could do is be vulnerable myself and be open to it so that they can see by example. But so that's an example of one of my mentors kind of showing me without showing me how this is an important, emotional maturity is important, because they went through it, and then it opened my eyes to how and funny enough, the mentors that I've had have mostly been men,
right?
Just by virtue of the job. So I haven't had a ton of female mentors. It's been mostly men. Yeah, that's.
And do you feel shortchanged as a result, or you're happy with the mentor-mentee relationships that you've had over your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like obviously the people that we're dealing with are respectful adults, and so whether they're men or women, they're just trying to help you be the best you can be.
Yeah.
And so I don't feel shortchanged not having had like necessarily a strong woman mentor. And I've had strong women in my family that have mentored me in other ways, not so much in my profession, but just in my upbringing.
Yeah.
Because I didn't grow up with my father, so I grew up with just my mom and my grandma, which are very strong female figures.
Yeah.
So I've had my share of female mentors, so I think I was due for some male mentoring.
Mix it up a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But absolutely, mentors have played a significant role in my, evolving into the leadership position that I'm in.
Yeah, it really does, and hopefully for the listener and viewer, it's an opportunity it's permission. You don't have to do this on your own. Yes, you're going to have experiences. Yes, you're going to mess up, like you mentioned earlier, and there's going to be those ruminating over things that didn't go the way you were hoping they were going to go, and those times where you didn't think you quite contributed as much as you could and should have under a certain circumstance or whatnot. But it's, there's a whole bunch of supports out there, whether it's coaches, whether it's mentors, whether there's specific dedicated training, whether, it's therapists, whatever that looks like. And we are built to be social animals, and we have that opportunity to say, I could actually, I think I could figure this out in 18 months' time, or I could maybe employ someone with professional expertise in delivering support to me to help me get that done in 3 months. What would I prefer? And then you can have a fiscal conversation with yourself to say whether it's actually worthwhile for the investment for right now. But that, no one does it alone. The examples of Steve Jobs and Richard Branson and the other entrepreneurs out there, Sarah Blakely, things like that. They're everyone that was part of their journey has been lauded or applauded at some point, but certainly mentioned, because yes, I'm the spearhead or I'm the figurehead of this particular thing, but there's a massive pyramid of people that are there in terms of support. So as I say, hopefully that would be one of the main resonating models from there. So I mentioned briefly earlier, Pilar, about the entrepreneurship opportunities that you've earned, that you've fashioned out for yourself within the organization. Tell me a bit more about how that's manifesting itself for you right now.
Yeah, so obviously the first opportunity that was presented to me was an opportunity to move to the Central Valley of California and open an office. Funny enough, there were people more senior than me that were offered the position before me. I was kind of like a standout, let's say, associate, but I was new. I had just started my career. And they were unwilling to take the risk, whether it was they didn't want to live in that area, their kids were in school, like they just were not in a life position or just unwilling to make the move. And I knew it was risky. I knew I did not know what I was doing. The owners of the company at the time knew that I didn't know what I was doing, but they were willing to put the time and resources into me, and they believed that it was possible for us to do it. So that was my first entrepreneurial endeavor, just taking a risk. I was at a place in life where it kind of made sense. I didn't have kids yet.
Yeah.
And so I moved up to the Central Valley of California, and I just got to work, and my entrepreneurial spirit of like, I'm going to get out there and just drum up business worked. I went out, I started meeting people all over the town. I started taking people out to dinner. And then before I knew it, I had hundreds and hundreds of cases coming into the office, and we had to hire. And so that was my first entrepreneurial endeavor. And it was an opportunity that it presented itself. Like I said, other people passed it up. And now I'm lucky enough to say that I've gone ahead of them in our company, because I took that opportunity. And when I got here, I made the most of it. Then as things have evolved, I've matured, as we talked about, kind of in like my management style, and I was given the opportunity to oversee 2 offices. Mm-hmm. I think it was during COVID, and we were kind of restructuring. And so I was like, yeah, I'm up for it. Still hadn't had a kid yet. Yeah. I thought, why not? Let's just pack something else on. I'm one of those people. I want to get as far as I can, as quickly as I can.
Yeah.
And so I took on a second office, and, as I was developing with some clients, they were asking me for help outside of my specialty at the time. They were asking for help with things like, their insurance companies are highly regulated entities with the state. And so the state comes in and does regular audits of their inventory for practices, like best practices. And they asked if I could help with that. And before I knew it, I was helping several clients do it. And we thought we could make a little side business doing, not side business, but a section of the company that focuses on this. There was a need for it, and there was a lot of state audits going on, in particular around 2019, around the COVID times, because you can imagine insurance companies were having issues all over the place with remote work and all these things. So I talked to the owners about building out a section of the firm that focused on this. the added advantage is that you're dealing with the businesses at the highest levels, like the CEO and the CCO of all these insurance companies, because it's their license, their ability to license in the state of California that's at issue with the audits.
Yeah.
And so you're dealing with the board. So it just brought in a new level of relationship for the firm. So we were no longer dealing just with local levels. We were dealing, like if it's a national company, we're dealing with corporate offices, we're dealing with their C-suite. So that's strengthening the relationship between our firm and those companies. And then we had the added benefit of helping them and adding another line of business to the bottom line of the company. So I started that, and that's going pretty well. And then recently, obviously, everybody knows that AI's been changing several industries, not just the legal industry. And so we decided to endeavor to kind of see how we could leverage technology in our industry. And so in between that time, because I had taken advantage of, all these business opportunities that presented itself, it gave me an opportunity to become an owner in my company. So I became an owner in 2022. So there's 5 of us, and the 5 of us decided to venture out and start a separate company where we're leveraging technology to automate certain things inside of our line of business. So which is insurance for workers' compensation. We've been, it's a lot of work, but it's proving to be pretty successful. We rolled out to a couple of insurance companies. We have some other large employers and insurance companies pending this year. So just a lot of entrepreneurial endeavors, which I've definitely gone in head first.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And opportunities like that can be aplenty at various times. And a lot of people wouldn't recognize them in and of the moment because they're so focused on what they're doing at that particular time, or they don't quite truly see the opportunity for the opportunity that it is. So there's the opportunity presenting itself, and then you being able to pay the appropriate type and style of attention to say, wait a second, there's a bit of a pattern here, or there seems to be an opportunity, there's an itch that I need to scratch of some description to find out if this is an actual thing or not, and then taking the actual action to do it. Those are significant levels of effort, energy, confidence, understanding, and the ability to be able to, if I could say, sell it to the other partners and owners to say, this is something that I think might have legs here, and it's proven to be the absolute case there. So I say all that to commend you for not just seeing the opportunity and then seeing it drift off into the distance and other people taking advantage, where you're saying, you're paying a different type and style of attention to other people as part of your leadership function, which the organization is absolutely benefiting from, and they should be very grateful for.
Thank you. It's a little bit also, and I think we talked about this before, of if not just doing the bare minimum of what's given to you, but seeing the opportunities inside of what's given to you. So, every problem that you're working, what you're trying to do is find a solution, but then every solution will create a new problem. And then every problem requires there's always something that you can be working towards. So I think everyone has the ability to be entrepreneurial and the best way to be entrepreneurial, I think, is inside of something that you know. So you're going to go into a job, you're going to learn a specific type of law or a specific type of medicine, and you're going to become an expert in that specific thing. And you're going to know that niche market better than anybody else, hopefully. But it's not just about doing what's in front of you, but seeing like the big picture about what you're doing and how it's impacting the greater ecosystem of what you're doing. And then thinking about, like I said, the problem that was put in front of you, the solution that you're proposing, and maybe the problems are going to result from the new solution and how you're going to solve that. And then you have this big vision board in front of you about, wow, we could do this and this. And then you're going to have ideas that are light years ahead of everybody else around you. And that's where, if you have a little bit of that work ethic and entrepreneurial spirit, it's just going to energize you to want to do more and more and more.
Absolutely. So. And I think during that process that you explained there, Pilar, is probably when you would start to see the drop off of people from an interest perspective, where they're saying, yeah, I can see it, I can feel it. That seems like a lot of work. And right now it's just not the right time, and I feel a wee bit bad saying that, but that's just the reality that I'm facing right now. So we'll just move on. And they could maybe do that with an absolute clear conscience to say, yep, it just wasn't the right time for us. But when you see the vision board, when you see the opportunities in the spider web going everywhere that it's going, and some people are like you, feet first, saying, let's give it a go. Let's see how we do here. And other people are kind of like, oh, I don't know. So it's almost like that ecosystem within the ecosystem of even just considering it in the first place.
And it's okay if you're the type of person that wants more, what they call it, work-life balance.
Yeah.
The company needs all sorts of people. They can't have a million entrepreneurs either, right?
Yeah.
So it's okay to be a workhorse. It's okay to be that person that, prefers to just do the job and go home and have their free time. Like it's not a slight on them by any means.
Yeah.
But it's not that hard either to go above and beyond, and do a little bit more and kind of set yourself apart. And to me, the rewards have outweighed like any, downside that I've had to sacrifice, let's say some time doing this or time doing that. The rewards have greatly outweighed it. It was worth it to me.
Yeah, and you have that demonstrable result as well to say, even if it didn't work out the way you thought, the other opportunities, in some way manifested themselves from that, or greater learnings came inside, or you had an opportunity to work with these different types of styles. I mean, it's that, fixed versus growth mindset to figure out what you're getting from things. I could talk about this stuff all day. I really, really could. But in the interest of time, as you know, this is called The Best You podcast. And what I do is I take the opportunity to ask each of my guests, what's the one regular practice that Pilar employs to give you the best opportunity to be the best version of yourself each and every day?
Tough question. Come on. I would say being authentic. I think it's a lot of people, they show up to work or to whatever it is they're doing, and they put on a face of who they think they have to be.
Yeah.
And that works for a certain amount of time, but it can get exhausting. I think if you're your authentic self, the good, the bad, the ugly, and you show up every single day like that, that's going to enable you to be your best self. Hence the title.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, the best you. 100%, and then what it also does is it creates more predictability. If you're faking it or acting the majority of the time, as you say, that's a short-term strategy that's going to be very, very, very difficult to sustain. And if you show up, then the more interactions you have with people, the more they can see the patterns, and they can feel the predictability to say, oh, she's in the zone right now, so it's best if we just leave this one on the sideline until she has a bit of time to breathe, or this is the opportune time to have Pilar sit down and consider it and say yes. And but that authentic way of being is very, it's very elusive for some people. I think is probably a decent blanket statement to make, because they don't know who they are, and they've only ever really been conforming, are doing their best to conform over time. So good for you for recognizing that and seeing and reaping the rewards and benefits from that over time.
Yeah, and look, people can also be scared of being their authentic selves. Then they may think it's too vulnerable or not appropriate in the workplace. And we've talked about, like, you obviously have to be disciplined in your composure and how you present yourself, but that's not meaning that you're not authentic. You're your authentic self. And I think if you're authentic, people know that they're getting something real with you.
Yeah.
And that breeds loyalty amongst your subordinates, and a closer type of relationship and a better work culture.
Definitely. This has been tremendous. Before I let you go, Pilar, where can people find out more about you and the firm?
Yeah, so we have a website. It's called Sullivan Attorneys. Attorneys is plural.com. So check us out there. We're constantly putting out webinars and things to our industry. So you can find me there.
Tremendous. Pilar, I've been looking forward to this one for a long time. Thank you very, very much for taking the time to chat with me today. This has been an absolute delight and an education. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Hello again. Thanks again for tuning in to this episode, and I do hope that you found it valuable and gained some insights. I do have an ask for you. If you enjoyed this podcast, I would absolutely love it if you would connect with me on my socials, and that's at LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Just search for my name and do whatever it is you need to do there to follow me and stay updated with all the latest content, tips, and discussions. And for any more resources that you're looking for, feel free to visit my website, garygillen.com. And while you're there, you can book a free, no obligation 30-minute coaching call directly with me through the site. Whether you're looking to enhance your performance or tackle a new challenge, I'm absolutely here to help you succeed, and I would absolutely love to hear from you. Thanks very much again, and until next time, keep pushing towards your goals and getting better each and every day, my friend.